Welcome to Storyflix. In this video, we will explain Fall in Love at the First Kiss. This movie tells the story of a teen who falls in love with a popular boy at first sight but rejects her confession in front of the whole school. However, she never gives up, and her sad love story begins. Will their love story meet in the future? Let's find out in Fall in Love at the First Kiss. Fall in Love at the First Kiss begins by showing a young man named Jeong Jisoo riding his bicycle to school. On the other hand, a high school girl named Yuan Shangkin appears to have entered the school area and is looking for her classroom. While looking, Yuan bumped into Jisoo, who was holding her phone, and accidentally bumped into his shoulder. But because Yuan lost her balance and almost fell down the stairs, as well as her phone, Jisoo tried to find a way to save Yuan and her cell phone from being damaged. At the same time, Yuan reluctantly grabbed Jisoo's tie and their lips met, signaling their first kiss. Yuan then apologized to Jisoo, but the young man ignored her. Yuan then secretly took a picture of Jisoo as he walked away from there. Yuan then attended a student meeting in the school hall, where the headmaster summoned an outstanding student to represent the students. She was shocked when she found out that the outstanding student was the young man who saved and also kissed her this morning, whose name was Jisoo. Yuan immediately falls in love with Jisoo, a smart student with an IQ score of 200, and is placed in Class A, known as the class of bright students. 2 years later, Yuan still likes Jisoo and often follows his news through his social media pages. While trying to get rid of the beehive in her Class F classroom, Yuan checks her cell phone and finds out that Jisoo is walking back to the building reserved for smart students like him. Yuan and hundreds of Jisoo fans started running to see their idol in person. However, the A building's security system hindered their wishes, which only allowed students with high IQs to enter there. Whereas a stupid student like Yuan could only stare at Jisoo from a distance. When Yuan attends a seminar, where Jisoo is one of the speakers there, she falls in love more with him and is determined to confess her love for Jisoo. However, when Yuan heard the news about Jisoo's closeness with a beautiful girl named Shahui, she immediately felt sad and hopeless. Yuan then went to the school roof to be alone because of her sadness. But then, her friends came just to remind her to stop fantasizing about being able to date Jisoo. A young man named Ah Jin came to see Yuan and tried to approach her not long after that. But Yuan insists that she will not give up and will confess her love for Jisoo no matter what. Yuan and her friends then plan to enter Building A to meet Jisoo and confess her love. Yuan finally gets her chance when the fire alarm at their school suddenly goes off, instantly turning off the electricity and shutting down all technology. She immediately ran to Building A and saw that the door had been opened. Yuan then ran into Building A and found Jisoo. Without further ado, she immediately ventured to express her love for Jisoo. However, Jisoo rejects Yuan's feelings and openly says he doesn't like stupid girls. Hearing his words, Yuan felt very sad and hurt. Unexpectedly, all the students in Class A recorded the embarrassing moment when Yuan was rebuffed by Jisoo and made fun of the girl. The teachers and the headmaster also knew Yuan's actions, rebuking her for wasting Jisoo's time. The next day, while Yuan was drying clothes in her yard, her drunk father ran out of the house and said they would have a house. However, Yuan reminds her father that they already have a house. But then, her house suddenly collapsed due to poor construction. The collapsed building immediately went viral and was reported everywhere, so Yuan became the object of everyone's gossip. Yuan's friends then tried to help by holding a fundraising event for her, but she felt even more embarrassed. When Jisoo and his friend passed Yuan and the F-class students, they sneered and thought that none of the F-class students were smart. Yuan, who was offended by Jisoo's words, then challenged him to prove that Class F students could be in the top 100 list for the upcoming trial. Jisoo agreed and accepted Yuan's challenge. After that, Yuan seems to be helping her father collect usable items from the ruins of their house. Her father later told her that one of his old friends called him and asked them to stay at his home for a while until they had a home again. Yuan and her father were then taken to the man's house, and how surprised she was when she saw the very grand and luxurious house in front of her and felt very lucky to be able to live there, even if only for a while. The man's wife then introduced their youngest son, Yushu, who didn't seem to like the presence of Yuan and her father in his house. But his mother said to be polite to Yuan and her father because they were guests. The man's wife, who was very enthusiastic about Yuan's presence at her house, then talked about her oldest son who was very smart and popular at his school and asked Yuan to marry him. However, Yuan then rejected him because she had liked another young man, even though the young man rejected her ruthlessly. That night, Yuan finally finds out that Jishu is actually the oldest son in the family after he goes to Yuan's room. Jishu then insists on Yuan keeping it a secret from everyone who lives in the house. While at school, Yuan was reminded again of her friends about her challenge to be in the top 100 list. But Yuan felt hopeless and pessimistic that she could not meet the challenge because she had difficulty learning. On the other hand, she also feels hopeless when she sees Jishu and Shahui's closeness, even though they are not officially dating. Yuan then got a message from Jishu's mother that was sent via her cell phone. After that, an idea flashed through her mind, and she was excited to fulfill her challenge to enter the top 100 list and prove to Jishu and his friends that not all F-class students are stupid. To save herself from the embarrassment of not being on the top 100 list, Yuan then begs Jishu to help her study for the trial exam. Jishu reluctantly agrees to. Because Yuan has a humiliating video of himself sent to Yuan by his mother. Jishu finally agrees, in exchange for Yuan deleting the video from her cell phone. From then on, Jishu started helping Yuan study every night, where he used an approach that could be understood by Yuan who had difficulty understanding some of the lessons. When at school, Yuan also looks very serious in studying and sometimes does not pay attention to her surroundings, so Ajin must always be near her to keep her from falling and getting hurt. By the time the exam started, Yuan seemed confident in doing all the exam questions, although she wasn't sure she could answer all of them correctly. On the other hand, Jishu looks worried about Yuan and hopes that she can do her exams properly. When the results of the exams and the students' rankings were announced, Yuan immediately headed there and was very relieved to find that Jishu was still in first place. Yuan felt bad if Jishu's ranking dropped because he was too focused on teaching her, while Yuan managed to rank 100 and successfully met the challenge. Long story short, when their school held an athletics carnival, the Jishu class and Yuan's class faced each other in a marathon race, which the Jishu class eventually won due to Yuan's mistake. Unexpectedly, Jishu's mother comes to school to cheer her son up and tell everyone about Yuan living at her house. Suddenly everyone questioned Yuan and Jishu's relationship, but Jishu acted as if Yuan was his assistant to quell the crowd's uproar. Irritated by Jishu's demeaning attitude towards Yuan, Ajin triggers a fight with Jishu. Seeing that things were getting worse, Yuan then broke up with Jishu and Ajin, saying she no longer liked Jishu. But later, Jishu's friend humiliates Yuan by showing video footage of her confessing her love for Jishu. In retaliation, Yuan then shared an embarrassing video of Jishu dancing while wearing women's clothes, complete with a long wig. An annoyed Jishu then pulled Yuan away from the chaos in the field. When they were alone, Yuan then expressed her feelings, where she regretted having liked a selfish and arrogant young man like Jishu and told him that she would not bother him anymore and would look for another handsome man to be her boyfriend. But when Yuan was about to leave, Jishu took Yuan's hand and kissed her lips. Long story short, Yuan and Jishu have now graduated from high school and are preparing to take the college entrance exam. Jishu is seen having a few minor incidents, including Yuan having an accident, which makes her unable to focus on her exams. That night, Jishu got into an argument with his father because his father urged him to study in the United States to inherit his company, even though Jishu wanted to achieve his dream of becoming a veterinarian. An annoyed Jishu then left the house. Thinking that everything that happened to Jishu was her fault, Yuan apologized to Jishu's parents and rushed after him. After they met, Yuan apologized to Jishu and said she would move out of Jishu's house. On the following day, Jishu finally left home to live his own life without the pressures and demands of his parents anymore. Long story short, Jishu and Yuan, who are currently studying at the same university, have lived their own lives. However, Yuan still seemed very worried about Jishu because she had not heard from him for a long time. It wasn't long before Yuan found out that Jishu was working part-time at the veterinary clinic and met him there. Even though Jishu was cold to her, he was secretly very considerate of Yuan. In the evening, Yuan follows Jishu to his apartment and sees Shahui also there and thinks that Jishu and Shahui are dating. But it turned out that Shahui was only there on business. After spending time with Yuan, Jishu gets news that his father has fallen ill and thus, he takes over his father's business and works while his father is undergoing treatment at the hospital, which adds to the stress and pressure in his life. Although he's caring for Yuan, but Jishu prioritizes the business. Jishu throws away Yuan to marry another woman to merge their businesses and thus save his father's business. Yuan then promptly rejects her love and runs away. Jishu's parents disagree with Jishu's decision to marry and tell him it should be from his heart whom he should marry. Another year passed, and Yuan was looking through Jishu's social media. Jishu then posts an update at the school hall in which he will talk at an assembly, in which Yuan goes to reluctantly. Yuan then enters the hall and sees that no one is there but her. Jishu then hides away, and Yuan calls Jishu's brother, into which he responds that only certain people can see what Jishu posts. Yuan then realizes that the posts were meant for her. Jishu then proposes to Yuan, in which she agrees. A flashback occurs at the end in which Jishu wakes up from his slumber during his time where he tutors Yuan and sees the love letter Yuan wrote for him. At that time, the audience finds out that Jishu is in love with her. We learn that when two people are destined to be together, nothing can separate them through this film. Basically, love will always reunite them.